Thank you very much, Rob. It's wonderful to be able to be here and attend this conference and to be able to report to you on a project that is very much in process. It'd be interesting maybe a year from now or 2 years from now to be able to report back on what's happened since. Is it okay if I sex it up a little bit? Is that all right? So there are a few things that kind of converged for me as I started to think about this. One of the things that I noticed in my own online trolling was that there were a lot, increasingly numbers of references in the, at least in the ads I was looking at, around people either looking for pig sex or identifying as being sex pigs. And in particular, I noted that there were more and more guys using the word pig actually in their username. So I did a kind of informal survey on Recon, which some of you may know. That's my site of choice. And here are a few samples that I selected. I'm a 43-year-old muscle boy. I'm a total pig, in caps, which means I like most of the things you guys on this site love. Fisting, big dildos, cocks, big rosebuds, hairy men, lean men, muscle men, big bears, daddies, bikers, skinheads, tattoos, piercings, nipple play, WS, and the list goes on. Safe sex. On Recon, it's always, sometimes, never, or needs discussion. This one, he chose always. And the location, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Another one, Bear, 47, why? Versatile, but mostly top dominant. Impassioned by working on ass with sex toys, fist, punching, Euro, spelled U-R-O, etc. Partnered, looking for pigs, single or couple guys for hard sex and long sessions. Safe sex always, Berlin, Germany. Next one, me, 36, 6 feet, black, Dominican, pig top, 34 waist, 18-inch neck, 52-inch chest, 20-inch guns, with real 10x7 cut dick. All of my boys are packing the same or bigger. If you contact me, be ready to get fucked hard and deep. You, nice round white Latin bubble ass, experienced at getting deep dicked, be in shape, masculine, power bottom, with an insatiable desire to be plowed and filled with as much dick as possible. Milk me with your hole. The looser, the better. Safe sex blank, Brooklyn, New York. The last one, unleash your inner beast. I need to surrender to your insatiable lust and obscene urges. I am a passion-crazed, inferior, sissy bottom who lives, in caps, to serve rugged, demanding men. The prospect of being your worthless bitch thrills me, in caps. I want to succumb to your deviant, in brackets, and shocking fantasies. I will look up to you with big, pleading eyes. I want to slobber all over your nuts. I want to devour your delicious seed. I will gorge myself, entering into a sort of hypnotic state, and only your cock will matter. I will be under your spell. Your masculine scent will send me into raptures. I am wriggling in a ravenous delight. I am getting wet. I am drunk with lust. Safe sex always. Toronto, age 24. He went on, that was about 1/3 of it. I was so impressed. And there are ones that are much dark. Do you want a dark one?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yes? No?
Sure.
Okay. This might be scary, I don't know. I have really old technology, and I was borrowing my partner's old notebook, and I forgot to bring the power cord, and I wanted to go on Recon last night and choose one from Vancouver, but I don't have one from Vancouver, so you'll have to fill me in later. Anyway, so darker one, 11. This guy is from Manhattan, Hispanic, 48. Never on the safe sex category. Sadistic, twisted, depraved pig is seeking pig slave boys for rocket-fueled sessions that include corrupting your mind, body, and soul and crash-landing it into the most primitive and darkest of regions where you will be debased morally, degenerated intellectually, and have your virtue permanently, in caps, impaired. Extreme and intense fucking, fisting, and anal penetration, toys, WS, BD, SM, raunch, kink, degradation, humiliation, confinement, dehumanization, pain, torture, and sensory deprivation are all some of the things you may encounter on your journey. And then he goes on also. It's another long one. So that's to give you a selection and a range. In terms of the gestation of this, there was a conference, a Rainbow Ontario conference that happened back in March this year, and I wasn't attending the conference. But I noticed an ad in Extra in Toronto that says, "Research ignored sex pigs. Shameless sluts could be key to HIV prevention work." And it was an interview with our friend Francisco Ibanez Carrasco, who some of you know. I know he came here for lunch today, and he's a bit of a star here, it seems. Lots of you know him. He has several interesting quotes in this article. But the first one was, "Isn't it time to critically assess the reasons why gay men take sexual risks?" So it's kind of like taking a step back, I think, and thinking about, so in HIV prevention work, traditionally, we focus on sort of what are the risks and what are the vulnerabilities, and how do we address those, and how do we convince guys to use condoms and practice safer sex, if not all the time, more of the time. But I don't think we've done a really good job in terms of actually looking at why guys want to take risks, and what are the benefits of risk-taking, and what are the pleasures that derive from that. So I'm a student of something called Motivational Interviewing, which you can hear about tomorrow afternoon. But I think that one of the things that I've learned from Motivational Interviewing is that it's so important to understand what are the benefits of a behavior. And if we're going to address, and this is for ourselves too, I mean, just think of any situation, any behavior that you have some ambivalence about. And we have ambivalence about all kinds of things. Like, it really would be better if I went to bed earlier, as a rule. But there's benefits to me of staying up late. There might be, we might be in conflict about, I don't know, exercising more, but there are benefits to not. So there's always a benefit. And for guys who are engaged in riskier sex, there are benefits. And so I think one of the ideas behind the Pig Sex Project was to investigate, to kind of use this subculture as a way to kind of investigate what some of the benefits might be. So what do these guys have to teach us? What do we have to learn from them? And the challenge, I think, and it was evident in this particular article, is that the way that this population, as a subculture of gay men, and as a subculture of guys associated with condomless sex, are kind of demonized, and even within the gay community. So I think that one of the ideas was to try and understand this population better. One of the things that informed this was a paper that Francisco wrote with Peter Hall called Positive Prevention for Gay Men Dismounting Missionary Positions. And it was looking at, this article looked at POS prevention with a focus, but in the context of the research that Peter, he's a research coordinator at CAMH and St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, and he and Francisco have partnered some of this research. They took a look at the research, they did a scan, and they found there's very little research on sex pigs. So another part of this is kind of leading to some potential research, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So this conference took place, and there was a discussion within the conference, and our friend Mike Hickey here was there as one of the facilitators, and I thought that this was a really worthwhile discussion to have in the community outside of a conference setting. So that was kind of the original gestation, and a few other things kind of came together. This has been a very organic process, no master plan here at all. We'd also been talking at the AIDS Community of Toronto about thinking about prevention work more in the context of resilience, more in the context of asset-based, more in the context of pleasure as a motivator. And really thinking about, again, what motivates guys? I mean, we do HIV and STI prevention work, and that tends to be a lot of the focus, and it's certainly the focus of some of our funding, which is very specifically oriented to that. But do guys really make decisions about sexual health based on risk for HIV? Or is that just part of a much bigger whole? Is that part of a larger picture? And maybe guys make decisions based more on pleasure, maybe based more on whether they're horny or not, maybe whether they're attracted to somebody or not, whether their desire for intimacy. So we started to think and talk about, and there was some sharing that happened through my colleague Paul McCartney Johnston, who's the Gay Men's Online Outreach Coordinator, and Rick Julian, who's here and also presenting at this summit, about the work of Eric Rofus and Jim Pickett and others who have really talked and really elaborated, and in the case of Eric Rofus for quite some time, since the late 90s, about the need to inform our understanding and how we approach gay men within this context of desire as a motivator, and pleasure-based. So that was also another kind of inspiration and theme in this work, in this project. So what we did was 2 community consultations in Toronto, and another one that's happening tomorrow night in Vancouver. And the ones in Toronto, the first one was a panel, a very kind of casual panel, and that was at the community center, the 519, which is the LGBTQ community center in Toronto. The second one was held at the Black Eagle, which is a leather bar. And the first one was more of a, like I said, a very casual kind of panel discussion. But the second one we modeled after a cafe-style small group facilitate discussion. And those it sort of took it to the next level. And the reason that we held the second one was that when we held the first one, guys said, this is amazing. Finally, somebody said, this is really exciting, and we want more of it. And of course, being pigs, that would be appropriate. So we said, okay, well, we're going to do more, but let's do it in a different way. Let's do it in an environment that is more casual. Let's do it in an environment where we can do these small group facilitated discussions. So everybody was responding in discussion to the same questions. And that's the format that we're going to be using here in Vancouver tomorrow night. And the amazing thing to me about this is that there's been interest in this beyond Toronto, and now Montreal is interested in doing something. So I think maybe we're on a sort of challenge to see which is the piggiest city in Canada. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. We have a little visual entertainment for you, but so let me sort of define a little bit what the Pig Sex Project is. So it is an expanding series of community consultations with men who identify as being sex pigs or who are into pig sex. There's been 2, as I mentioned, in Toronto. I've described a little bit about what the events look like, but essentially there's a discussion, introduction discussion of about 45 minutes, and then a large group sharing. The whole process is about 90 minutes. Guys have consistently told us they wished it was longer, but we feel like that's a compact amount of time, and we want to encourage as many guys as possible to take part. It's really built on an expanding collaboration. I've mentioned some folks already. In addition, through the collaboration with him here, Jody Jollymore has been organizing the event here at Steamworks. I also mentioned Francisco. Francisco and Peter, as researchers, have been consulting on this project as we've gone along. The other folks who've contributed in terms of facilitation back in August, Owen McEwen from the Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance, and Marco actually was another one of our facilitators. People have been interested in wanting to take part in this. And that's and as I say, the network is continuing. There's now some guys in Montreal that want to do a consultation there as well. I think where we're leading is sort of building some future research and proposal and intervention in the spring. But this is where we are. This is where we are now. What guides us in this is that we're pro-sex, obviously, pro-choice, anti-stigma. As I mentioned, very much about pleasure-based and desire. We're also really thinking about, a lot of times there's something called othering, when we kind of put people in categories and boxes, and to some extent we've all experienced that. And I think the same thing happens with guys into pig sex. It's kind of like, these guys are kind of like the sexual outlaws, and some people would say deviant, and I noticed that there was some laughter as I was reading, particularly the one from the young guy in Toronto, and I'm not sure what that laughter was about. What was that laughter about?
Self-identification. Yeah, exactly.
So okay, all right.
It's not the only answer, but it's part of it.
Yeah. Anybody else? Cheesy poetry, yeah.
He's obviously an English major. Yeah.
English major, okay. Somebody could relate, okay.
Yeah, it's like it was an essay.
An essay? Maybe it was. Maybe it was. Sometimes there's nervousness about talking about this, and it's interesting because, we're trying to create a safe place for guys to talk about something that is stigmatized, actually, and that is sometimes demonized and bad, considered to be bad. And so we have this discussion about, the good gay versus the bad gay, right? And the good gay is the guy who's, uses a condom, probably somebody who's in a relationship, and the bad gay is the guy who doesn't use a condom and is promiscuous, and so we think of that in a very different way. Of course, we think about this in the context of celebrating sexuality, and we're really providing a space, I hope and I think, to talk about stuff that's taboo. And what the guys have told us so far is that they really appreciate this opportunity. And I think also from a research perspective, I think what these guys have to tell us is actually very important. Because what we've discovered as we've talked to them, and they've talked to us more than us talking to them actually, it's very different from a lot of the program that we might otherwise do. There's no overt educational component at all. We just create the space and the guys share and they talk. There's a very sophisticated level of negotiation around risk that takes place. It's certainly far from mindless for most of these guys. So there is a kind of KTE aspect happening here. So I'd like to share with you, as I approach wrapping up here, just some of the things that the guys have told us. So what did they tell us? So first of all, that we spent a lot of the first session talking about, okay, so what is pig sex? And that question has come up. It's a great question. Well, what guys told us was that they didn't want to be, they saw it as a fluid definition to a large extent. They didn't want to be sort of boxed into, more guys would say they're into pig sex than identified as being pigs. And it's this idea that, there's a menu of options, and we heard some of those, right? There's all kinds of possibilities, and some of these lists are like really, really long, like 20, 30 items. And that it varied depending on who they were with. And the roles would vary also depending on who they were with. So it's this idea that we live in multiple locations, under different circumstances, and that we adapt to some extent our role depending on who we're with, and depending on what our desire is. Coming back to desire, there's also a very strong element, I think, of reclaiming sexuality, both as for pos guys and for negative guys. And one of the interesting things that happened in the discussion was, do pos guys have all the fun? And there was definitely a sense that for most of the pos guys that they were freer, they felt freer. But there's also another perspective, which was that some of the pos guys felt like they were more constricted. They had to be more conscious about their sexual choices because of their status. And then the negative guys said, no, wait a minute, it's not all about you pos guys, like I'm a pig too. And that was really interesting to be in this process where there was this kind of bridging happening. And I think that's one of the other potentials of this project. And I think there's also a sense of again, sort of coming back to this idea of celebrating celebrating sexuality. And I think that I don't know how you guys feel, but I think that we're in a time and a place where there's a real need for that. I think that in the work that I do and in the folks that I talk to and in the community, there's a real sense of wanting to talk about pleasure, wanting to talk about what we do well and how we're creative, and particularly around sexuality, and that this is actually a real strength and a real source of resilience for us. Thank you very much.